Kent Stater TV. Election Night 2024.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for KSTV's 2024 election show. I'm Matt Corelli.
And I'm Landry Torres. We'll be giving you updates all night long on the presidential election and state races, but we'll start right here in Portage County.
Joining us live from the Portage County Board of Elections in Ravenna is our own Lex Rady. Lex, good evening. What can you tell us?
That's right, guys. I'm here at the Portage County Board of Elections where polling workers are bringing in ballots right behind me. The main issue on this ballot is the race for Portage County Sheriff. The race is between John Barber and incumbent Bruce Sikowski. Now, Sikowski has recently faced many allegations that have garnered national attention and even a response from the city of Kent's council. Portage County Sheriff Bruce Sikowski is facing new allegations of using inmate labor for his re-election campaign. Former Portage County jail inmate Chris McCullough says he was a part of a work group that built a building for Sikowski's campaign at the fairgrounds.
It was for selling his merchandise. And then after that, we went and worked News Lodge for him for his stake dinner fundraiser.
The inmates were paid $3 and given food and cigarettes for compensation. McCullough says that they were never aware what the labor was for until afterwards.
So instead of us knowing what we were doing, we were thinking we were helping the community. In all reality, we were doing something strictly for the sheriff for his personal gain.
These allegations come a month after Sikowski made a controversial Facebook post calling for people to write down the addresses of residents with Kamala Harris campaign signs in their yards. Residents complained to City Council about concerns for their safety.
We wanted residents of the city of Kent to know that we stood behind them and their right to freely be able to express themselves.
The council passed a resolution affirming that voting is a First Amendment right and ensuring the safety at polling locations. However, some residents are still questioning the ethics of Sikowski's campaigning methods and his statements.
His statements, about Kamala Harris and about immigrants and so forth, treating one group of citizens differently than another group of citizens is not only illegal, but it's also unethical.
Sikowski did not respond to an interview request. He did clarify his social media statements with another post. He also told other news outlets that any inmate labor for his campaign. Now, stay tuned for current election results, and I'll hopefully be back with some ballot results. But for now, we're going to take it back to Liv and Leonardi at the news desk.
All right, Lex, thank you very much. We'll hear more from her as the night goes along. Well, this afternoon, KSTV had the opportunity to speak to Portage County Democratic Sheriff nominee John Barber.
He spoke about the amount of voter turnout and political support he's seen while campaigning today.
Well, actually, it's been overwhelming. We've been pretty much all over the county. We've been driving around just to be visible and be present should somebody need something. But the lines are amazing. A lot of the polling places we've been to, there have been lines out the door.
He also discussed some of the day one plans and initiatives voters can look forward to should he be elected.
When we get there, the first thing to do is, you want to meet with all the people who are currently there. Take some time, talk to them, get a sense of what they see going on, things that they feel might work better, things that might work better with them to be able to do their jobs, give them the support they need to do the job. I would very much like to work towards getting the Sheriff's Office accredited. With accreditation, I believe, brings professionalism, and I think that that's important.
Portage County's incumbent Sheriff Bruce Sikowski's office did not respond to our requests for an interview. And speaking of Sheriff Sikowski, he has spent much of the past few weeks in the news, but not because he's running for re-election.
We now turn to our correspondent Eli Fetterspiel, who has the top headlines. Hi, Eli.
Hi, you two. Good evening, Portage County. Portage County Sheriff Sikowski has made headlines several times this election season. These are the stories. Sheriff Sikowski made headlines nationally in September when suggested that Portage County residents should, quote, write down all the addresses who had her signs in their yard, end quote, in reference to Vice President Harris. Sikowski, who said that on a Facebook post, also used the term illegal human locus when referring to migrants and suggested that Harris voters should be responsible for housing them. These comments have put Zakowski in hot waters and have put him in the spotlight midst of his election against John Barber. Sheriff Zakowski's controversial Facebook post was not the only headline he made in the month of September. A report shows that deputies in Zakowski's office falsely imprisoned 2 black men for cocaine possession. Zephaniah John Robinson and Jack Metcalf were charged with drug trafficking in August of last year when police found white powder in the back of the car Robinson was driving. However, the car belonged to Robinson's sister, who sprinkled baking soda to fix a moisture issue. Both Robinson and Metcalf have been absolved and are now suing Zakowski and the sheriff's office. For new updates and changing developments occurring tonight in your country and community, please check KentWire.com. Eli Federspiel, KSTV.
All right, Eli, thank you. Well, before the polls closed today, we spoke to Portage County Republican and Democratic Party leaders about their perspectives on tonight's election.
Both parties explained about how they believe Portage County is leaning ahead of the final vote.
Well, I believe that Portage is going to turn red. It's going to go for Donald Trump in a pretty big way. And for years, Portage was kind of one of the purple counties, you know, and it flipped, and wherever it flipped, then the state flipped as one of those. But since the 2016 election, it has been solidly shifting completely to the right.
So honestly, right now, I think Portage County is sitting basically at a tie. And I say that because of a few factors. So to me, it comes down to the ground game. It comes down to who you've talked to. It comes down to where you're meeting voters. And one of the things that we really talk about is meeting people where they are. So from a local aspect, I'd say it's absolutely tied. It's a dead heat. We've seen that both in the interactions that we've had with voters, but also in the polling that we've had in some of our races.
Republicans say their perspective is based on a 2-year precedent of Portage County voting red and with personal interactions.
On the other hand, the Democrats' perspective is based primarily on polling algorithms, volunteer registration, and early voting numbers and outreach efforts.
The Republican platform versus the Democrat platform has a couple things. One is that the Republican platform stands for the Second Amendment. The Democrat platform stands for gun control, and those are written right into their platforms. The Republicans stand for legal immigration, and the Democrats, it's a free-for-all, come on in.
I think for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, it comes down to experience. It comes down to morality and the type of country we want to be as far as the rhetoric that we use and who we choose to work with. For me, I think people are going to vote for the individual who is looking out for their best interest, someone who you're not always going to agree with, but at least she's willing to come to the table and listen, whether she agrees with you or not, or the person who said, on day one, I'll be a dictator.
And within those last few hours of the polls closing, both parties shared their efforts to get as many voters as possible to the polls.
And people are calling people to say, hey, did you vote yet? Can I drive you to the polls? And so we have a list of volunteers that are willing to drive, whether they're Democrat or Republican. If you want a ride to the polls, just call the office and we'll get you a ride to the polls.
Go to portagedims.org, get our phone number, call our office. You call us before 4 p.m., we will do everything in our power to get you a ride to the polls. And I don't care who you're voting for. We started having our candidates go out to early vote locations at the Board of Elections and talk to folks because we saw lines as long as 4 hours. It's because that's the one thing, you know, Republicans weren't doing. They had volunteers there, everybody did, but they didn't have their candidates. Their candidates weren't there talking to folks and saying, I want your opinion, I want to know where you stand on these issues, I want to know how I can earn your vote, and I want to tell you a little bit about why, you know, I want you to vote for me.
Issue 44 is on Portage County's ballot, and Landry, it's concerning the care of abused children.
Yes, and KSTV's Lauren Biscoff has more.
Issue 44 is a replacement levy proposed by Portage County Job and Family Services. The organization takes care of abused, neglected, and dependent children in the county.
So this has been a levy that the taxpayers in Portage County have supported since the 1960s. And so these dollars are essential in providing for placement costs for kiddos.
If the levy passes, county residents will pay $43 for every $100,000 of their property's tax value each year. The county auditor estimates the levy will collect $5.7 million annually. Although the levy has been supported for a long time, not everyone is convinced it will be pushed through this time.
When it comes to this particular levy, there are going to be people, I'm quite sure, based upon the recent development of property values going up through that assessment that are just going to vote down every levy.
If the levy passes, it will begin in 2025 and continue for 5 years. Jeffrey says the money accumulated from taxpayers will go towards food, transportation, clinical care, and more for the children. Job and Family Services says without this levy, they will have to cut vital support services. Jeffries hopes voters will continue to support Job and Family Services in their efforts to protect children when casting their vote this election season.
It truly takes a village to protect children.
Reporting for KSTV, I'm Lauren Bischoff.
Election season has been in full swing for some time, and as the November 5th deadline approaches, we check in on a more local race for this upcoming ballot.
Yeah, KSTV's Kobe Slusser has the story.
The Portage County's treasurer race between Republican Joseph Bika and Democrat John Kennedy is nearing its end as the election deadline closes in.
I have a one-track mind right now. That's all I've been able to think about.
John Kennedy is seeking re-election after being appointed in November of 2023, when former Treasurer Brad Cromes resigned. Running against him is Joseph Bika, former Ravenna mayor and councilman.
I am fighting for the taxpayer. So anybody that's paying tax within Portage County is who I'm fighting for.
But what exactly is a treasurer? What do they do? What kind of decisions do they make? And why should I care?
I put the role of the treasurer in 3 main buckets. One bucket, collect the taxes. The second bucket is to really reconcile what you collect every single day with the county auditor's office. We do that daily. Our numbers have to match up. And then the third piece is a really important piece. It's managing the investment portfolio for the county.
Anything that comes in, which is income, comes into the treasurer's office. The treasurer accounts for that income and then deposits it into the banking system and accounts for that into the correct departmental funds.
The county treasury is vital in managing budgets and allocating money for many different local amenities, such as your local library, police department, and fire department. In such an important position, both candidates believe that they are qualified for your vote. For KSTV, I'm Kobe Slusser.
And even up until Election Day, voters may still have had some concerns regarding voter security, about how it all works, and if it's being insured.
That's right, Matt, and KSTV's Grace Kaiser has the story.
As the result of the last couple presidential elections, voter security has become a topic among voters.
For us, it's how we secure the ballot, both in production and how we send ballots and how we receive the ballots and how we count the ballots.
The Portage County Board of Elections works to ensure that the ballots being received and sent out are being handled and filled out accordingly in order to ensure voter security.
When we are receiving them again, we are receiving them as a bipartisan team. We're checking them in, we're making sure all the information is valid, and then we are processing those ballots appropriately.
Although the Portage County Board of Elections says they do everything to ensure voter security, it is still a concern to some.
I think it's, you should be looking at if fraud's a question, and we need to take everything extremely seriously, especially with the climate that is this election.
Although there is a concern among voters with the security of their ballot, there has yet to be any problems here in Portage County.
Voters don't realize that every state has different laws and regulations regarding ballots, ballot security, and how we issue ballots. Ohio is well known nationally as being probably the most secure, if not one of the top 5 most secure states, as far as how our ballot security and our security protocols are.
The Portage County Board of Elections says that by learning and understanding the precautions that are being taken to ensure voter security may just help with voter concerns.
The more educated you are as an individual and the more understanding you have of the process and how that process works, it always prevents and it keeps people alert.
Reporting for KSTV News, I'm Grace Kaiser.
The 2024 election special on Kent Stater TV will be back right after this.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Today I'm going to talk to you about physics. Come on in, girls. Let's go. This is the first rocket to get humans to Mars.
Really tall.
I'm a rocket structural engineer, designing and building parts of the rocket. You are the generation that will be stepping foot on Mars. Do I have a group of astronauts on my hands?
Yes.
You can become a rocket scientist or whatever else you want to be.
Welcome back, everyone. You know, a huge topic of conversation in the Ohio election is issue 1, and that's concerning gerrymandering.
That's right, Matt. And today we have KSTV's very own director, Sydney Brown, to tell us more. Sydney, good evening.
Good evening, you guys. Issue 1 reignited a conversation of redistricting in Ohio with a yes vote to put a citizen commission in place to redraw district lines. Here's the latest about the issue and voter representation.
Clearly the public's still not happy. Clearly the public still wants something different, or they wouldn't still be responding if you saw the polls that came out.
Specifically from Baldwin Wallace, a new poll shares that 69% of Ohio voters oppose gerrymandering, the process of creating electoral boundaries that give one party an advantage. And the Issue 1 ballot initiative is drawing increased attention.
And this time taking politicians completely, as much as possible, out of the process.
There are politicized views on the proposed changes for how Ohio would redistrict, with this independent citizen body of an equal number of Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
A vote for yes is a vote to ban gerrymandering so we can finally get fair maps. Gerrymandering is anti-democratic. It does not represent the people's vote.
Yet the Citizen Commission is facing opposition.
It's unproven. It's untested. It's not like it's been done before. I mean, it's your wildest imagination as how it's going to be.
Nonpartisan organizations like the League of Women Voters are calling out the lack of representation.
We have advocated for fair districts for decades, fighting both Democrats and Republicans who have rigged maps for candidates. Literally thousands of our volunteers out collecting signatures to get Citizens Not Politicians on the ballot this year.
As voters head into the polls, there are many local policies like Issue 1 that will have local impacts that experts anticipate.
Deep frustration in the United States right now with, especially among young people. If you look at the polling, do you think democracy is a good way to run a country? Are you satisfied with democracy? Do you feel well represented? There's a lot of people saying no.
In working in applied politics and civic engagement, Strawn notes these growing frustrations could be linked back to gerrymandering.
I do the things good citizens are supposed to do, and yet I feel like there's no traction on these issues. This is a part of the reason, maybe not exclusively, but really successfully gerrymandered districts are one of the reasons why. So yeah, if you want people to be disillusioned, if you want people to lose faith in democracy, if you want people to be frustrated with the quality of their representation, keep it up.
This statewide issue uncovered more questions of democracy and representation for Ohioans and could impact more local election processes with these proposed changes. Matt?
Well, thank you very much. Now let's take a look at the state Senate race as the candidates will be introduced here. On the Democratic side, Sherrod Brown is the incumbent seat as he has served 3 terms. The issues that Brown is focused on includes restoring abortion protections for women across Ohio, and he also voted for infrastructure to combat climate change, along with calling for tighter gun laws. He also has sponsored bills to provide police with de-escalation training and improve community relations.
Bernie Moreno is running as the Republican candidate for the United States Senate election in Ohio. Moreno is supported by Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the Conservative Club for Growth. He uses these backings heavily in his campaign. Moreno supports securing America's borders, reducing inflation, and supporting Israel. On the issue of immigration, Moreno relates his own personal experiences of being an immigrant in his political campaign.
All right, now let's get some more in-depth information on that race as we give you a look live in Columbus at Sherrod Brown's watch party.
KSTV's very own Michael Neenan has more information.
Yes, that's right, guys. I'm here at the Hyatt Regency here in Columbus, Ohio, for incumbent Democrat Senator Sherrod Brown's watch party. Now, currently, as you can see, there are many of Sherrod Brown's supporters have come, including many messages playing on the board over there, which are encouraging voters to vote as Democrat at regional, state, and also congressional levels. Now, Brown did have a few guests, including Ohio 3rd District Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, as well as 10th Circuit Court of Appeals Justice Sean Dingus, who all came supporting Sherrod Brown. Now, Sherrod Brown is seeking a 4th term as Ohio Senator in the U.S. Senate, which he started back in 2007. Now, previously he had been a representative for the state of Ohio from 1993 to 2007 before moving to Senate, meaning that Brown has been in Congress representing Ohio for around 30 years now, and he hopes to do it for another 6 years, as term limits for Senate are around 6 years. Now, currently his opponent is Bernie Moreno, a Republican, who is having a watch party in Westlake, is what we heard. And as of now, all the officials here are watching a lot of the election outcomes right now, and many of them are cheering for the Democratic candidates that have won for the most part. Though currently we're still getting many new vote totals. So definitely stay tuned for that. Well, that is all I have for now, but of course, be sure to stay tuned. We will go live again here in Columbus. Now, I'm Michael Neenan. Let's send things back to the desk.
All right, let's take a look at some results here. Issue 1 in Ohio so far, 53.2% leading the way is no, compared to 46.7% at yes.
And for the U.S. presidential election, we have 46.2% for Kamala Harris and 52.6% for Donald Trump.
If Trump were to win, he would be the first individual to win the presidency in 2 different times. For Ohio Senate, Bernie Moreno, the Republican nominee, a tight lead over Democrat Sherrod Brown, just over 2 percentage points.
For the U.S. House of Representatives, Ohio District 13, 57.9% for Sykes and 42.1% for Coughlin.
At Kent State University, we want all students to develop a global perspective. And with more than 200 study abroad programs in 60 countries, there are many opportunities. One is found in the Central African country of Rwanda, where students connect with survivors of the 1994 genocide.
We're learning about the reconciliation process. Rwanda sort of took a very community-based approach to how they recovered.
In January, a group of Kent State student athletes traveled to Rwanda, where they organized a soccer camp for children.
While we were there, we got to work with kids and spread our knowledge about sports.
And we brought shoes, cleats, soccer balls for everybody.
It was a transformational experience.
The people of Rwanda were full of joy. They were also full of excitement and life.
I think the big thing that I'm going to take home personally from the experience is there's not just one way to do things.
This was unlike any other academic experience I've ever had.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
As Election Day approached, college students were getting ready to go out and vote. But where did they get their information?
KSTV's Tegan Evans answers that question in her story.
Many students are first-time voters, so they are doing research and educating themselves on important topics before casting their vote.
This is my first time voting in the presidential election.
Social media is a popular platform that students see political information on all of the time.
I see a lot of political information a lot around TikTok and also just like scrolling and just like on Instagram.
And the candidates know it. According to the New York Times, both Trump and Harris post on social media attempting to fit into the TikTok aesthetic. Both candidates are using social media as a way to campaign, but this may not be the best way to make your decision.
The nature of social media in this regard is problematic because it's not out there to be very informative. It's limited to certain sound bites.
Jackley says social media is the easiest to access for students, leading them to rely on social media for their news.
You can't just listen to one news source and believe you're well informed.
Political science students here at Bowman Hall are being taught to avoid social media as a way to get political information. Instead, Jackley is directing them towards unbiased news sources like NPR.
I try to tell them where to get their news from, not tell them but where to get their news from, but to become choosier, diversify, look at a diversity of resources.
As a result, students in Professor Jackley's class have changed the way they go about researching politics.
Having her class has just made me more aware of a lot of these things, and I kind of hope that through her class I can learn some alternate sources that are more reliable.
Reporting for KSTV, I'm Tegan Evans.
Students were not only learning about the candidates. You know, Matt, many were also dealing with Election Day stress.
Yeah, and KSTV's own Joe Malbin has more.
The November 5th election is inching closer and closer, and many students are feeling the burn of election anxiety.
Have you been feeling the stress related to the election season?
Yeah, I think so. It's a big election this year, especially just it being president is a big election, and then on top of that, the stakes between both candidates.
And mental health experts from Town Hall 2 and Healing Strides in downtown Kent have also seen a rise in stress.
I would say we've seen a great deal of both anxiety and depression related to the election. A lot of people are just feeding off of what's on social media and the media alone, and it's just greatly impacting their mental health. I think we're seeing a strong increase in the impact that the election is having.
Counselors say this could be due to a growing sense of political polarization.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think this election more than previous ones as well. I think this election's especially divisive in ways that past elections haven't necessarily been.
Mental health experts say reducing screen time on apps such as Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or social media in general can help reduce election anxiety.
But there are other ways you can guard your mental health this election season.
For really any general sense of anxiety, it's self-care. What are those things that you enjoy doing that help you feel at peace? It might be like a walk in the park or talking with family, talking with friends.
For more tips, check out the Kent State CAPS website. Reporting for KSTV, I'm Joe Malbin.
We are now joined by Zach Graves, who is Undergraduate Student Government's Director of Governmental Affairs, who is one of the main voices behind Kent State Votes. So thank you so much for being here tonight with us. I know it's been a crazy day for you as well. Can you just kind of walk us through everything that Kent State Votes has been working on this entire semester to get students engaged and ready to get out there today?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate coming on, and I'm excited. So we kind of started our semester's efforts with voter registration in September. All throughout the month, did different activities, tabling events. We had an electoral extravaganza week, tried to diversify how we can get students engaged in voting and in civic engagement. And so leading up to that registration deadline, we focused on that. Then throughout October, we pushed more of the education side of things, so doing more tabling events about the issues and candidates that were on the ballot, of course, nonpartisanly.
Yeah.
And then once that the day came, we just planned as much as we could. We planned transportation to the polls for today, Had a lot of students show up to that and get a ride to cast their votes on campus. And I think it was a really successful semester for us.
It was so fun to kind of just follow along because I think you guys had a great presence on campus as well. People were getting more engaged and excited and more knowledgeable, like you're saying, reaching different groups of people on campus as well. I'm also a member of the Panhellenic community. You came to speak with us there. What was that like? I feel like it seemed super rewarding just to be able to engage with so many different groups on campus.
Absolutely, yeah. This semester has been really good for Kent State Votes. We have really tried to institutionalize our messages and our resources throughout the semester. We re-upped our website, got it updated, got a ton of new resources on there, worked with CAPS to make that election toolkit to deal with election stress, created new graphics and things on our social media, reached out to new departments and organizations, people on campus, like Panhellenic Council. That was great to speak to them too, just because they were a really energized group of people, a lot of people to speak to, and really good to get the message out about registering and then getting educated about how to vote.
And I want to make it clear that this isn't just ending today. This is a really ongoing process. So how can students just keep going with this in civic engagement?
Yeah, I think that it's really important for students to keep in mind that we are the future. As young people, we have power to create change in the future, and thinking about the issues that matter to you and just trying to stay motivated and keep that mindset that change will come if you keep pushing for it. So that's what we're trying to do with Kent State Votes, and we're excited to see where the future of the organization goes.
Thank you for joining us today, Zach.
Thank
you.
you.
So inspiring. Well, as students experience the election tonight on campus, we have our very own KSTV alumnus experience it firsthand in Washington, D.C. Kennedy Gotham graduated last May and works for the BBC in our nation's capital. I had the chance to talk to her today about what it's been like covering this historic event.
We're so excited because just a year ago, you were in our shoes and you were helping produce our election show. And now you're on this side of things where you're a freelance journalist for the BBC.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting time to be working in journalism for anybody, especially working in an international organization. It's very different. But the coverage we're doing is to help people better understand the U.S. election and, why it's so important, not just for the U.S., but also within like our foreign relations and things like that. So the international coverage is definitely something that I've had to learn to get used to. But it's really interesting being able to kind of break our election down to help people better understand it.
Yeah, and can you narrow in on how that audience is different from just viewing times to how do you really have to cover this election to make it make sense across the pond?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because we have so many outlets that we are going out of. We have our live TV programming, and then we have a very big digital page, the BBC website. And lately, we've been getting a lot of traction on our live pages, which is something that I feel like a lot of news organizations are looking into. But that's really where a lot of our viewers will go to get right then and there updates, because our correspondents are out in almost all of the swing states. We have a correspondent, whether that's for TV or for digital. So they're constantly contributing to the live page with, the latest news happening in that state. Anything that they're noticing, if they're interviewing different voters and trying to understand why they're voting the way that they are, they'll be able to contribute to that live page. So a lot of our viewers go there. And then with our live TV programming, we have people all over the world watching. So we really have to explain our coverage in a way that everyone will be able to understand it. So we're definitely looking at more of a broader scope. Like, what are the issues that Americans are most interested in? Why are they voting the way that they are? Is something that people usually will talk about.
It seems like there's a big fascination with the U.S. politics and just zooming out completely to that international level.
Yeah, a lot of people are very interested in the U.S. political races just because the U.S. does have somewhat of a large impact on other countries. And even like within our foreign relations, people are interested to see who becomes president because they know whoever is in office, that's definitely going to affect the way that our country is ran and the certain types of legislation that are coming out of our country. So a lot of foreign leaders are interested in seeing who takes that White House seat.
And then I really am just curious, you're about to go into your shift for the night. So yes. What is that going to be looking like for you today?
Yeah, for me, I'm working with the news content and news gathering team. So it's going to be a lot of breaking news. If there's anything going on with anything happening at polling locations, different Senate races, I'm also monitoring. So for example, in Ohio, that's actually a Senate race that we have flagged and said, you know what, we need to be watching this because Ohio's kind of an interesting state with our politics. So that they know that whoever wins in Ohio, that's going to look very different for the future of the state. So there are certain Senate races that we will be following, and I'm going to be doing a lot of news gathering and research about, where certain watch parties, also watching states polling, like when the numbers start coming in, I'm going to be the person kind of saying, okay, in this state, we're seeing an uptick in, people voting for this candidate or that candidate. So I'm kind of be helping, explain all of that and then get that out to the newsroom.
It's so cool to hear, and I just am geeking out over all of it. Is there anything else you just want to share? It's a crazy day to work in news for Election Day overall.
Yeah, I think this is definitely for anyone who's watching and anyone in the newsroom who's listening to this interview. Take this moment and know that you are watching history unfold, even covering it at, a college level and being a student-run newsroom. This is a huge thing to be doing, and it's a great achievement for all of you. So you should all be proud of yourselves and give yourself some grace in this very stressful time, and just be proud of the work that you're all doing.
You're so awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
And college students aren't the only ones who are being affected by the election.
That's absolutely right, Matt. Our correspondent Anthony Leonardi spoke with high school government teachers about how current events are impacting their classes.
Yeah, that's right, guys. Millions of young adults around the country will be voting in their first ever election, and navigating this election season can be difficult for both high school students and teachers alike. The presidential election is rapidly approaching, and many young people around the country will be voting for the very first time. Around 8 million Americans will be casting their first ballot during high school, and many teachers face challenges as their students become more involved in the political process. At Streetsboro High School, the teachers explain how they help guide their students through the election season.
The focus for me is just trying to make sure that kids are active with understanding issues, and then going after the person that best represents their beliefs.
As educators, they say it is important that they do not talk about their own political beliefs during class.
If a kid could sense any direction that you lean, and then you might lose half of your class. So I always am very cautious of that, to keeping everybody together.
In his sociology class, Robert Kidd often plays devil's advocate to encourage peaceful conversations among his students.
My goal is not to change anyone's beliefs, but to solidify what they believe, to make them question what they believe, and make them understand the difference that other people have on their beliefs. And just because we're different doesn't mean wrong.
To encourage participation in voting among his students, Jeffrey Rayner reminds them that intense elections have always been around.
I think we let history be our guide to relax the situation, to say this isn't the end of the world.
According to experts, young people are the least active when it comes to voting, but the numbers seem to be slowly rising. Nationwide, the voter turnout for people ages 18 to 24 is only at 51%, and here in Ohio, that number is 53%. Reporting for KSTV, I'm Anthony Leonardi.
All right, well, we will speak with 3 members of Kent State student media and their experiences covering this election when the 2024 election special on KSTV returns.
Today,
the world could use a little more understanding. Understanding nurtured by shared values. We come together at Kent State. Different dreams, different viewpoints, united by purpose. Preparing to make a difference in our divided world. Wherever you are in your life's journey, come learn with us. Begin at Kent State.
Roll over. Chance high five. All right. When you adopt a shelter pet, you discover all the things that make them unique. And your mother and... I am totally a hot person. Right, guys? Thanks for being honest. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org.
It's not unnormal for student journalists to cover the election, but a publication here at Kent State is covering it at a unique angle.
Oh, absolutely. Joining us now in studio to learn more about Fusion Magazine is KSTV's Liv Sharp. Liv?
Hi guys, that's right. Well, I'm here with Alex Miller, the editor-in-chief, and Ari Collins, a staff writer for Fusion Magazine. So first we're going to talk about, Ari, the series of articles that you wrote called Queer Politics Catch-Up. Can you speak about what it was like writing those articles?
Yeah, I've always kind of been interested in politics, but taking it from a more unique perspective to kind of really give our readers what they care about. It was a really fun experience, like watching debates and finding issues that I think that our readers would find most interesting.
Well, every journalist is going to face challenges, so what was the biggest challenge you faced in writing these?
Honestly, trying to decode like the messages within the debates specifically was really hard for me because I'm trying to find an angle that matters to like a very niche community. So I think that was the most challenging part.
All right, Alex, we'll turn to you. So can you break down some of the specific issues that are affecting the LGBTQ+ community that may be on the ballot or not on the ballot?
Yeah, of course. So in this election, we're definitely seeing a lot of anti-trans rhetoric, especially whether it's advertisements or more specific issues talking about like trans health care. And then we're also seeing a lot of talk about censorship, especially within education. And yeah, while you said these are not explicitly on the ballot, we definitely see different candidates taking different stands and making it pretty clear what they are standing for. So there's a lot on the line here, but we're trying to stay hopeful and look on the bright side of things.
Well, you guys have done a lot of excellent work pre-election leading up until now. You have a print edition of Fusion coming out here on November 21st called The Visibility Issue. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So it's actually been a really exciting experience for us. We're printing twice this year compared to just once, and we've been expanding our news coverage online as well. But with the Visibility Issue, we're focusing on really telling our stories in an authentic way to us as students who are part of the LGBTQ+ community. It's really a unique opportunity at Kent too. We're one of the only student magazines in the region focusing on these issues. So really it's about making our voices heard, going into some topics that otherwise would not be told. We're talking about specific issues with the university and some issues that came up with mail that affected students with their chosen names at home. So it's a really hard-hitting story. We're also getting into local-owned businesses, and yeah, just trying to give a full view of both the community and what students at Kent are experiencing.
Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. Matt, Landry, back to you.
Thanks so much, Liv. Kent State students are heading to vote with issues on their mind. The Kent Stater and the Department of Sociology and Criminology at Kent State University conducted a survey for students. The survey asked students to list the top issues that were important to them as they head to the polls this election season. The most important issues recorded were cost of living, abortion, the economy, and climate change. On the contrary, the least important issue to students were crime, immigration, and student loans.
And in that survey of 253 students, when asked who would they be planning to vote for, 65% said Kamala Harris will have their vote, with 29% saying Donald Trump. Among freshman students, the former president edged out the vice president in that question, with 50% of first-year students saying that they would vote for Trump, while 47% saying they would vote for Harris. Now joining us is political beat reporter for the Kent Stater, John Angolia. John, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Pleasure for being on. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So let's kind of start with your experience personally, because this, like we've heard a lot of times throughout the media, this is one of, if not the most historical elections, probably in generations.
Yeah, actually, I mean, I just talked to two political science professors, one from Kent State and one from the University of Akron. And they were saying in many ways it's a unique election. Obviously with Joe Biden dropping out early on, Donald Trump being a previous president who lost and is now running again, and even Kamala Harris as an African American and Indian minority status. You know, in many ways we have not seen this before, and that's what other political science professors have been saying.
And I have to ask you, is there anything in particular that you're trying to look out for in terms of the presidential race?
I would just say high voter turnout. As mentioned before with those political science professors, they have been saying that this is going to be a very tight election, very contested, especially in swing states such as Pennsylvania, Georgia, even Arizona to an extent. So yeah, just keeping an eye on that.
And what about in the local races here, John? Because there is a lot going on the Portage County ballot.
Yeah, you know, one issue in particular is the sheriff race between Sheriff Zukowski and Sheriff Barber. And I had the pleasure of covering that story actually when it first happened. You know, it's an issue that a lot of Portage County residents are passionate about. I was at the NAACP meeting when a lot of residents were very concerned about Zukowski's comments online, his stances on illegal immigrants and Kamala Harris, and that'll be a race to keep an eye out for. I don't know the status of it at the moment, but it seems to be very tightly contested. A lot of Portage County residents are that's definitely on their minds.
All right, that's great insight. Thanks, John, again for joining us.
Yep, thank you.
All right, let's now go back out to Ravenna and the Portage County Board of Elections with our own Lex Rady.
Lex, what can you tell us?
Good evening, Portage County. As you can see, we are still at the Board of Elections right now. Not that many poll members behind us, but earlier they were just lined up in the hallway. I mean, it wrapped around. So many ballots. We actually found out that there is 129 polling locations across Portage County, and that there were 2 poll workers who went to each location to pick up the ballots. We also got the results for the absentee ballots. Now, this is strictly absentee results. This does not have any indication about how the election results will end. But right now for the Portage County Sheriff race, we are looking at Barber in the lead with 18,099 votes and Zukowski with 14,624. Now, like I said earlier, this is no indication of who will win the election. Those results may change, but we are hoping to come back with more ballot results, and we're going to take it right back to Franklin Hall.
Thanks, Lex. Kent's League of Women's Voters have been extremely active this election season, focusing on getting people to the polls.
KSTV's Chloe Porter has more.
I had the pleasure of speaking to the Kent State's president of the League of Women Voters about their work this election season.
The League of Women Voters is on top of anything and everything voting this election season. They have been active for over 100 years, and this is their busiest year yet.
So, because we are a nonpartisan organization, we never have and never will support or endorse a candidate.
The League's website says that their goal is to empower citizens to shape better communities worldwide. They also encourage everyone to vote in the different elections.
So, our mission, right, is to get as many people registered to vote and to get people to the polls. And that means not only getting them to the polls, so not only registering and getting them, but making sure that they have the access that they need to the polls.
The League is actually a unisex organization that anyone can join, including men.
I actually did not know that anyone can join the League of Women Voters.
While the League of Women Voters does not support candidates, they do support issues. This year they're in favor of issue 1 to end gerrymandering in Ohio.
So We have had registration drives. We have been collecting signatures. We have been out passing out vote yes on issue 1 literature. We have the politicians currently on the other side that want to remain in power, right? So they are posing opposition to issue 1, which of course we have said yes to citizens.
The League of Women heavily encourages that everyone votes this election season. For KSTV, I'm Chloe Porter.
Now moving our focus over to some results. Ohio issue 1. There are 46.7% who have voted yes and 53.2% who have voted no.
And on Portage County issue 44, helping to provide funding to care for abused and neglected children in the county, 58.4% going yes, with 41.6% going no.
Now on to the presidential election. Kamala Harris has a 46% vote and Donald Trump 52.6%.
And for Portage County Sheriff John Barber having the lead with 55.3% and Bruce Sikowski at 44.7% per the Record Courier.
Now for Ohio Senate, Sherrod Brown with a 46.2% and Bernie Moreno leading with 50.7%.
In the U.S. House of Representatives in District 13, Amelia Sykes having a resounding lead at the moment, 57%, compared to Kevin Coughlin's 43%.
I don't remember how it started. Our back and forth. Victory. Fumble. Repeat. It always came back.
Dad! Okay, here we go, throw it! Yeah.
You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
Nice.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Come on! Go, Diane! Yeah, keep it going! Yeah! Go, honey!
If you love them enough to drive an hour to cheer them on as they get beat 11-0 in the rain, then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Welcome back. This is an election where a lot is on the line, Matt.
Absolutely, and we're going to start discussing that with Ohio's Supreme Court as they will inevitably rule on abortion decisions, access decisions, following the passage of last year's Reproductive Rights Amendment, meaning whichever justices are elected this year will help determine what abortion care looks like in Ohio. Despite 57% of state voters approving the 2023 amendment to enshrine reproductive rights in the state's constitution, this did not undo the many anti-abortion laws that are on the books in the state. Republicans currently hold a 4-3 majority in Ohio's Supreme Court.
A county judge strikes down an Ohio abortion ban on Thursday. An Ohio law restricting abortion was taken down by a judge who said that the voter-approved amendment that supports reproductive rights made the abortion ban unconstitutional. Hamilton County Common Pleas Judge Christian Jenkins says that despite the strongly worded amendment, the state of Ohio seeks to diminish and limit reproductive rights. Jenkins says that his ruling upholds voter wishes.
The Reproductive Rights Amendment passed by Ohio voters in 2023 included protections not only for abortion, but other health care like miscarriage care and IVF treatments. Fertility doctors say the amendment has been reassuring to patients, but with legal and political challenges still remaining, those rights are definitely not being taken for granted. The question of abortion and reproductive rights came roaring to the fore of American political life. Voters continue to list it as a top concern, along with the economy, democracy, and immigration.
Now let's talk about where things are at nationally when it comes to abortion laws. There are different types of abortion bans to be made aware of, including trigger bans and reason bans, along with different types of abortion restrictions, like parental involvement and consent laws. If a state is in the expanded access or protected category, abortion is protected. Any other category is not protected by abortion.
So let's break down the two candidates' stance of abortion. For Kamala Harris, she supports a federal right to abortion and wants to prevent states from banning the procedure before fetal visibility.
For Donald Trump, he has said that he would not sign a federal abortion ban, but that states should be allowed to enable any restrictions that they want.
And taking a look now at healthcare, the value of that has become one of conversation this election season.
Let's now go back to Eli Fetterspiel with more information. Hi, Eli.
Hello, we will be covering specific healthcare issues in Ohio as well as nationally. We will dive into exactly what it will look like for each presidential candidate if they were to successfully win the presidency, as well as its effects on healthcare at this time and its future for the next 4 years. While many Ohio voters state their disappointment in the current healthcare system, with 75% polled stating that medical debt is experienced by many, healthcare is on their minds during this election. High priorities for voters include health insurance, covering necessary and preventative medical tests and treatments recommended by their doctor, along with lowering monthly costs and offering coverage that works for all. The topic of healthcare is directly and indirectly on the ballot. Insurance premium support affects citizens that need expanded access and the expiration on its subsidies set for end of 2025, the FDA's determination of eligibility for medication abortions, and the access that gives, medication, drug price negotiations, and where that will take the world of prescriptions. These policies are included in the presidential decision made in the next 4 years. Bringing you the presidential candidate stances on healthcare, starting with Harris. Proposals include expanding access to birth control, cancel medical debt, and building on the Inflation Reduction Act, where she looks to expand on the $35 insulin cap given to Medicare patients. Trump's would include lowering healthcare insurance premiums, repealing and replacement of the Affordable Care Act, and defunding public schools that have a vaccination mandate. The election's effect on the Affordable Care Act has been on the front of voters' minds, with nearly 2/3 of Americans believing the federal government is responsible for ensuring health care coverage for all citizens. Over 470,000 Ohioans obtained insurance through the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. However, Trump previously talked about repealing the act, but hasn't said how he'd replace it. The Biden-Harris administration is expected to save Medicare patients and the program itself $7.5 billion beginning in 2026, with its agreement for Medicare to negotiate expensive prescription drug prices. Experts believe that accelerating the speed of negotiations will either raise a number or lead to earlier bargains in a drug's lifetime. Trump has not expanded how his administration would run the negotiations.
All right, thank you very much, Eli. The 2024 election special on KSTV News will be right back after this.
At Kent State University, student athletes from around the world find their home away from home.
My dream has always been to come to the United States and play basketball on a college level.
I'm going to be the first graduate in my family. It's a big thing for me.
The faculty members here at Kent State are incredible.
I feel like Kent State, it has
all the opportunity in the world.
Northeast Ohio is the ideal place for them to excel athletically and academically. From the moment they arrive, students are surrounded by a network of support that helps them thrive and achieve their dreams.
We are a family, so helping each other out is one of the most important things.
Straight away I knew I had people that I could count on. As soon as I got here, between coaches, friends that I met pretty early on, I feel like this is a second home now.
This is the place. This is it.
Coach Starkey, he always asks about how you're doing.
Our coaches are so supportive. They make you better athletes, and so many of those qualities are transferable. You're going to come out of here being a successful student athlete.
So, I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that! That's disgusting! Oh, poop already! You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
Meet the Scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you!
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Tomorrow's news leaders.
Today's top stories.
From an award-winning student newsroom.
This is Kent Stater TV.
Your community.
Your stories.
Throughout this political cycle, immigration has been a topic at the forefront of many campaigns, some headlines even in our state of Ohio. For example, 46% of all unauthorized people in Ohio were from Mexico and South America. 33% have lived in America for less than 5 years. 77% of them are over the age of 25, with most being between the ages of 25 and 34. And of those older than 25, 33% have a bachelor's or some other professional degree. Nearly half of them are uninsured and only 26% are homeowners. But the biggest story about Ohio immigration was focused on Springfield, Ohio. 12,000 and 15,000 Haitian immigrants have taken residence in the city between Dayton and Columbus, with Mayor Rob Rue saying the population has grown 25% over the last 3 years. These immigrants took national spotlight when Trump said that the Haitian immigrants in Springfield were eating dogs and cats. Now, these claims were discredited, but they still sent shockwaves throughout the community, with immigrants being threatened with violence publicly. Now, Ohio wasn't the only state affected by this political rhetoric, but down in Florida, a state which also has a large Haitian population, many said it felt hurtful. Haitians were also upset with the Democratic Party's delay to condemn Trump's statements. Trump said he would revoke a policy that allowed many Haitians to live legally in the U.S. Now, 4.8 million immigrants live in Florida, with the others living mostly in 3 other states: California, Texas, and New York. 35% of immigrants above the age of 25 hold a bachelor's degree or more, and half of immigrants over the age of 5 speak English proficiently, and Spanish is the most commonly spoken languages in immigrants' homes. One of the biggest headlines regarding immigration came a few weeks ago when comedian Tony Hinchcliffe called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage before a Trump rally in New York City. Trump's campaign released a statement condemning the responses, but many Puerto Rican celebrities threw their support behind Harris. Nearly 1 million Puerto Ricans live in swing states, and some analysts believe that they could be a deciding factor in the election. On to the candidates' viewpoints on immigration. Trump plans to continue his anti-immigration legislation from his previous term. He's called for immigrants to be rounded up and held in camps before being deported. Harris has denounced many of Trump's policies, but supported Biden's restrictions on asylum seekers, supporting a proposal that would hire thousands of border agents and even closing the border if immigration reached a certain level. Regardless of who wins, immigration is sure to be a big part of the next administration. Back to Matt Landry at the desk.
All right, Liv, thank you very much. Before people went to the polls to vote, another important topic of discussion was the economy.
That's right, Matt, and our very own Anthony Leonardo has more on the topic. Anthony, what can you tell us about this?
Thanks, guys. The economy has been a focal point throughout the election campaigns, and we will take a look at the national economic concerns. But first, we will see what it's looking like right here in Ohio, as Ohio is currently ranked 33rd in terms of economic performance. This is due to the measure of 3 different categories, such as cumulative GDP growth, cumulative domestic migration, and non-farm employment growth. However, it is ranked 26th for its economic outlook, which is measured by many different state policies like tax rates, tax burdens, and state minimum wage. And the economy is ranked as the 4th most important issue for Ohio voters. Even though Ohio seems to be mirroring the national economy, the unemployment rate is roughly the same as the national average. While industries and educational services saw a 2.6% decrease, other industries like manufacturing and mining and extracting saw increases. The most growth was in the retail industry, however, that saw a 25% increase. The state's 2 leading industries are still manufacturing and real estate. And another one of the top economic issues for voters is inflation, which has seen an increase in concerns among voters, according to the Pew Research Center. Vice President Harris has blamed price gouging and corporate greed as the cause of the increase in prices and has proposed a national ban on price gouging, while Donald Trump has focused on both energy and tariffs as a plan to combat inflation. And the national economy seems to finally be balancing out after its improvements over the last 2 years. Unemployment continues to drop, and the economy has been performing well recently. Many public opinion polls have shown that many voters, however, are still worried about the economy returning to its state during the pandemic, and that could influence how they are voting at the polls. Nationwide, gas prices have been falling or have already fallen below $3 a gallon in about 19 states. Other than groceries, gasoline prices have been a major part of campaigning for the affordability of living. Kamala Harris has taken some credit for the drop in the prices, while Donald Trump has said he will get the prices down to under $2. And both president candidates have focused a great deal of their campaigns on the national economy. Vice President Harris has supported the Biden administration's spending on renewable energy and infrastructure. She also supports incentives to build housing and expanding tax credits for middle-class households. Donald Trump will focus on cutting taxes and enacting tariffs. He also says he won't cut Social Security or Medicare benefits. Many people have also cited climate change as something that has brought them out to the polls this year. With a look at the biggest climate change stories from this election cycle, we kick things back to Matt and Landry.
All right, Anthony, thank you very much. According to Climate Check, Ohio's climate is most at risk when it comes to precipitation and heat, both being ranked within 81 and 72 respectively. Both of those numbers mean that the risk factors are considered both very high and extreme, according to the website's graph. They also say that out of all the top cities in the Buckeye State, Columbus has the highest overall climate risk, with the lowest being the city of Lorain.
Environmental advocates are weighing in on the impact that climate change policies will have on the state of Ohio. Ohio Environmental Council member Spencer Derrick says that the Trump-Vance administration would likely end climate efforts through the Inflation Reduction Act. Derrick says this may be concerning for Ohioans.
Well, some have coined the 2024 race as the climate election. The reason why is because the UN has warned that if emissions aren't drastically reduced by 2035, global climate disaster will be inevitable. However, the impacts of climate change are already being felt daily here in the U.S. That stems from the economy, immigration, natural disaster recovery, and transportation.
Kamala Harris endorses the Biden administration's efforts towards climate policies. She has promoted environmental justice programs that focus on the effects of climate change on more marginalized communities. Donald Trump champions the unlimited production of fossil fuels, and he says he would undo climate regulations that the Biden administration has put in place.
And when it comes to energy, the two candidates running for president are on opposite ends of the topic. Vice President Harris hasn't said much in public during her campaign trial on energy, but her record as senator and attorney general in California was very favorable towards environmental justice and climate change issues. President Trump, meanwhile, has largely indicated that he wants to increase oil and gas extraction. We'll have more as 2024 election on KSTV News returns.
I feel like her heartbeat is like same speed as mine, and I think we have this like deep connection, this heart connection in her heart, that there's there's room for me and Mom. When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer. It's a sensory thing. It's a thing with Asperger's.
She's really good with Anya. I've seen adults react to my daughter when she has meltdowns like she's from a different planet. And this little animal just sat next to my child and was just like, you know, it's gonna be cool. She's my superhero. Good job, kitty cat. When we adopted Lucky, we discovered all the wonderful things that make her unique.
Lucky's a little bit of a lot of things, but mostly she's pure love.
What to expect when you're expecting a teenager.
Today we're talking about how to wake up your teen, and this works literally every time.
Good kisses. Good kisses. You heard how loud
I heard. It wasn't you. Yeah. It was the...
Is that bacon?
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
How's your hair? Is it pretty?
Daddy,
It's pretty.
Maybe I'll sit alone. Maybe I'll sit alone.
Tomorrow's news leaders. Today's top stories.
From an award-winning student newsroom.
This is Kent Stater TV.
Your community.
Your stories.
Now, in elections prior, we have gotten a decision on the night of the elections, but that may not be the case for today's election.
Yeah, due to polls staying open late and early voting, we most likely won't get results until tomorrow.
CNN's Laura Aguirre has the story.
Women's reproductive rights. The economy, more than anything.
Border's huge for me.
I want our country to heal. I want to move past this.
Cornerstone issues driving massive voter turnout in several states today. In battleground Pennsylvania, Philly's district attorney says he's seeing more aggressive behavior than in the past, with his office investigating about a dozen calls from polling places. He's got a message for troublemakers.
We do have the cuffs, we do have the jail cells. We're not playing. F around and find out.
A couple Pennsylvania counties reported minor technical malfunctions with some voting machines, but voters could still cast their ballots. A judge granted one county, Cambria, extended hours to accommodate.
I am completely confident in our ability to run the elections fairly, and all of our voters' ballots are going to be counted.
Georgia had its share of phoned-in threats today. In one case, voting was briefly disrupted at 2 locations, bomb threats that were found to be non-credible.
We identified the source, and it was from Russia. They're up to no mischief, it seems, and they don't want us to have a smooth, fair, and accurate election.
An election that may take a while to tally. Election organizers urge patience.
It's hard to predict when people will be able to wake up and know the result out of Pennsylvania.
I just want to assure the American public that it will happen, but it will be sometime after midnight.
The nation's last polls don't close until 1 a.m. Eastern Time Wednesday morning in Alaska. I'm Laura Aguirre reporting.
A deep red Pennsylvania county has declared a 2-hour extension due to issues while scanning ballots. Widespread problems caused confusions and long lines in Cambria County earlier today, threatening to disenfranchise voters in the critical swing state. Authorities reassured county citizens that their ballots will be counted despite any malfunctions that occurred. Let's give a breakdown of how the Electoral College works in the wake of its political importance. State political parties choose their electors, and each state is given the same amount of electors as it has members in the House and the Senate. With a total of 538 electors, a candidate needs a majority, at least 270, to win. While a projected winner is typically announced on election night or soon after, the Electoral College vote does not occur until mid-December. Donald Trump, who served a single term from 2016 to 2020, is leading the GOP in his 3rd consecutive presidential election. With wins in Georgia, Mississippi, and Washington state, Trump surpassed the 1,215 delegate threshold needed to become the presumptive Republican nominee. After threatening Democratic norms during his previous candidacy, he remains consistent with shown ambivalence about basic Democratic ideals during his current 2024 campaign. He became the first former U.S. president to be convicted of felony crimes in May of this year after a New York jury found him guilty of all 34 charges in a scheme to illegally influence the 2016 election through a hush money payment to porn actor Stormy Daniels, who said her and Trump had a sexual encounter years prior. Sentencing was given on July 11th, only days before the Republican National Convention, held in Milwaukee, formally made Trump their nominee. The former president had no issue casting a ballot for himself in Palm Beach earlier today, despite Florida's typically challenging efforts for convicted felons. While Trump was convicted in Manhattan earlier this year, he is benefiting from the 2021 New York law that allows people with felony convictions to still vote as long as they are not serving an incarceration term at the time of the election.
All right, thank you, Eli. Let's take a look back as to how we got to where we are today this election season. Starting all the way back on June 27th, when the first presidential debate was held, in a debate where mics were muted and there was no studio audience, President Joe Biden was struggling to communicate his answers while former President Donald Trump said many misstatements. This debate led to the result of many Democrats calling for Biden to withdraw from the race.
Biden's performance in the debate was called disastrous by many, and although many said you can win a debate in 30 minutes, Biden lost it in 10 over concerns with his cognitive abilities. Many top analysts said that his performance could be what lost him in the election should he continue to run. Although he seemed to be more coherent as the debate went on, social media was already abuzz with calls for Biden to drop out of the race.
And Vice President Harris spoke with ABC News in an interview after the debate and said, "See that Biden had a slow start, but a good and strong finish." She also said President Trump was using misstatements throughout the whole debate while highlighting the accomplishments that Biden has had in office.
Then on July 14th, there was an assassination attempt on Trump at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The shots grazed Trump's ear and killed a spectator. The 20-year-old gunman, identified as Thomas Matthew Crooks, was shot dead by Secret Service agents. Many politicians denounced the act, like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and Congress is continuing to investigate how the attempt was not foiled sooner.
Trump took to social media after the assassination attempt, saying, "I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response on the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an act can take place in our country." All right, taking a look at some results. This is from the Record Courier in Portage County, issue 44. 58.4% say yes, asking the question replacement levy would help to provide funding to care for abused and neglected children in Portage County.
For the U.S. president, we have an update. Kamala Harris has 46% of the popular vote, and Donald Trump has 52.6%. We expect to see this to continue to change as many states are closing their polls.
For Ohio Senate, Bernie Moreno has a 4% lead in the race against Sherrod Brown, as he is currently having 50.7% of the vote.
And for the Portage County Sheriff, the incumbent Bruce Zukowski is currently down to John Barber. Zukowski has 44.7% of the vote, and Barber has 55.3%.
And in Ohio District 13, Amelia Stykes still ahead, as she has been seemingly all night long, 55.2% to Kevin Coughlin's 44.8%.
And for the Portage County Treasurer, Democrat John Kennedy has a slight edge over Republican candidate Joseph Bika, with Kennedy having 51.8% and Bika at 48.2%.
And we have a projected winner saying that issue 1 is no. It will fail, as Ohioans will vote to keep redistricting in the hands of lawmakers.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
My name is Liam Aberly. I am an assistant designer here at Yellow Cake. Everything I do currently is all stuff that builds on top of things I learned at Kent.
They had a different commitment to their craft or to their major. Part of that is just who he is naturally, and I think part of that he gleaned and honed at, his time at Kent State.
There has been a bit of a budding scene here in Cleveland between Valerie and some other designers that live around here, and we're really starting to put Cleveland on the map in the fashion world.
Tomorrow's news leaders.
Today's top stories.
From an award-winning student newsroom.
This is Kent Stater TV.
Your community.
Your stories.
Today was a very important day to many Americans as they got to exercise their civic duty to vote for the next president of the United States.
CNN's Jen Sullivan has the story.
Americans heading to the polls to decide who will win the White House and shape the country's political landscape for the next 4 years.
I feel like this is one of the most detrimental moments we'll have in the country.
I'm excited to give women a chance to be represented.
The latest CNN poll showing Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris having only a slight lead over former President Donald Trump among likely voters. But with the margin of error, there was no clear leader heading into Election Day. The winner will need 270 of the 538 electoral votes to clinch the presidency. The race likely boiling down to these 7 battleground states, where polling has found the two candidates are nearly tied. Among the most pivotal, Pennsylvania, where 19 electoral votes are up for grabs. Both candidates making their final campaign pitches in the Keystone State Monday.
It is time for a new generation of leadership in America.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
More than 78 million Americans cast their votes before Election Day, with millions more voting Tuesday.
People who don't get out and vote don't have anything to say.
No matter the outcome, history will be made, either with the first convicted felon becoming president, or if for the first time in 235 years, America elects a woman to the presidency. I'm Jen Sullivan reporting.
Heading back now to our election timeline, on July 15th of night 1 of the Republican National Convention, former President Trump chose Ohio Senator J.D. Vance to be his running mate. Vance was elected to the Senate 2 years ago, and Trump said a big reason why he went with Vance was because he will be strongly focused on the people he fought so brilliantly for, the American workers and farmers in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, Minnesota, and far beyond.
Following the selection of J.D. Vance and the Republican National Convention, President Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. He released a statement on social media saying he intended to serve the rest of his term and encouraged Democrats to support Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee. This was on July 21st, and no candidate had dropped out so close to the race since Lyndon B. Johnson in March of 1968.
So on August 2nd, Vice President Kamala Harris was formally chosen as the Democratic nominee. Once President Biden dropped from the race, Harris ran unopposed and is the first Black and South Asian woman to become the White House standard bearer for a major political party, along with being the first Democratic nominee in the near 200-year history of the party to hail from a Western state, as she was born in Oakland, California.
After many candidates were speculated to be Harris's VP pick, she settled on Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the former teacher and Army Guard veteran. Walz and Harris had never worked together prior, but Harris picked Walz for his authenticity. Walz was also chosen for his enthusiasm. He said at his first rally that they'd sleep when they're dead, and he'd spend the next 91 days having Americans' backs.
Tuesday, September 10th, saw Trump and Harris take the debate stage for the first time and what would be the only time. Both candidates felt strong about their performances at the debate, as Harris focused on abortion and her plan, while Trump highlighted the economy and called out the Biden administration for high rates of inflation throughout the presidency.
And following that debate, there was a second attempt on Trump's life. This time he was golfing near his club in West Palm Beach when authorities spotted a rifle out of the bush. There were no shots fired on the president, but the suspect, Ryan Wesley Ruth, did intend to assassinate Trump. He was later apprehended. The same task force investigating the first shooting is also investigating the second.
October 2nd saw the vice presidential debate take place in New York as the debate highlighted topics such as foreign policy, reproductive rights, threats to democracy, immigration, housing, and more. The debate was hosted by CBS News, and the big takeaway from viewers was the amount of respect that the two had for one another, acknowledging their differences throughout the event.
Elon Musk's sweepstakes that gave away $1 million to someone who registered to vote has selected its winner, a voter from Michigan. This giveaway from Musk's Trump-backed PAC has drawn many objections from the federal and state level. Authorities, the Department of Justice, even warned Musk that the giveaway may violate voter buying laws.
All right, let's now go back to the Portage County Board of Elections office for an update from Lex Rady.
Hi, Lex. How you doing? Well, we're still in the Board of Elections, Portage County, and right now it has died down a little bit. Things are a little quiet here. We actually recently have gotten the results of 51 precincts out of the 129 polling locations in Portage County. Right now, Barber is still in the lead with 26,389 votes, and Sikowski at 361 votes. Right now, we're going to take a look at how the controversy may have impacted Sikowski's votes in this election.
Well, let's take a look at some results. Actually, you know what? I beg your pardon. We are not going to take some results. Instead, KSTV's election special for 2024 will be back after this.